really great. You know, this is a small room. We're kind of improvising tonight. I'm delighted you're here. We're going to have a great talk. And this is, I think, number 25, lecture number 25 for a Menu for Change program. It's so hard to believe. It's been an incredible journey. We keep having so many interesting topics. And this is a first. This is the first time we're going to do a meal planning lecture extravaganza. And team led by none other than Tracy Grant and Dr. Kira Baum. And we have a guest speaker, or a brief guest appearance today by Kendall. Kendall's going to speak from Kendall's Kitchen, and she'll speak just briefly about her services and has some little food tidbits for you too. So this should be a lot of fun. I have a brief intro. I often have a lot of stories, and I kind of like this sense of putting a puzzle together, trying to get the pieces in place, and kind of a meal plan can be seen this way. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about karma. So 2 days ago, I had a patient of mine visit me, and she's a woman in her 80s. She's a retired actress, lovely woman. And she was telling me about this book she had read and was hoping that I had read it, and I hadn't. And she was saying how much she appreciated me as her doctor, and she was going on and on about this. And she said, I really hope you read this book. So we parted ways. And an hour later, I saw another patient of mine who came in and did her physical and gave me a little Christmas card and gift and went off to the lab to get her blood work. And I opened her gift. And it was the book. And it's called Being Mortal, Up to Grund. I think maybe some of you might have heard this or read it. And I was actually speechless. I thought, what's the chance? What are the odds of this? So I figured out, I ran down to the 4th floor where this first lady was, and I said, guess what? And I showed her my book, and I think she was going to have a heart attack. But it was just one of those, like, why do things happen? And I think we have to appreciate those moments in time and not necessarily explain them, but just say, wow, today's a really good day. So today is going to be a really good day to talk about meal planning. See the segue. And we're going to get Tracy set up first, and then Dr. Kira is going to present, actually Kendall in between. At the very end, we're going to have just kind of a little free-for-all, and I wouldn't say small groups, but just kind of an open session to kind of address maybe some of your concerns. So.
Well, Dr. Kira and I both talk a lot about the importance of meal planning. If we haven't talked to you about it yet, we will. Probably many times, because we both have experienced it and seen it to be really an asset in achieving your goals. So some of the benefits to meal planning, whichever approach you might take, whether it's mine or Dr. Kira's, and as you'll see, ours are very different, helps you stick to your goals, can reduce stress through the week, reduces time commitment from cooking during the week, and saves money and reduces waste. And meal planning is something that I just kind of fell into and then refined it according to my needs. So when I first started meal planning, and I was trying to save money by not wasting food. And my meals were not elaborate, they were just pieced together. And then as I started learning more about nutrition and my health, and I had particular goals that way, I utilized meal planning to help me accomplish those goals. So today, I'm going to teach you the process that I use. Some of you may think I'm totally crazy. I think Dr. B and Kira probably both thought I was a little bit crazy at first. But
we love crazy.
We love crazy. But it works for me. And the truth is, this approach has evolved over time, both to get more structured, and then some weeks it's even less structured. But this is what we will call the structured approach. So, of course, feel free to stop me if you have any questions in the meantime. So the first step, plan to plan. So I think this is really important. You need to have a day that you choose to meal plan. And for me, this happens to be kind of Wednesdays and Thursdays. And that just has to do with how my week rhythm goes. But for me, grocery shopping tends to happen on Fridays. Cooking happens on Saturdays and Sundays. So I'd like to make sure that I get all my meal planning done by Thursday. I also have a template, which you can see here. I actually just jot this down on a piece of scratch paper each week. I should have actually brought mine for this week so you can see how messy it is. But I always start with that template, and again, I start with Thursday, since that's the day that I start my meal plan. I also like to check the sales that are going around, see if there's any sales on good quality meats, any bulk items, things like that, and that's just to help me stick with my budget. But before I choose my recipes, I want to try and take advantage of those things if I can. So, step 2 would be to fill in the meals that are already provided. So as you can see here, I have a few meals that I've listed out. I don't know if you can read those, but they say date night out, lunchtime Sunday is out, and then community group on Tuesday. And those are just, again, some weekly rhythms, but I know that I don't need meals provided for me on those days because I'm either going to be out or it's going to be provided for me. And again, I do that just so that I'm accounting for all my food. I'm a big fan of not wasting any food if possible, and this way I know exactly how much food I'm going to have and how much I'm going to need. So the next step that I like to take is to fill in my weekday breakfasts and lunches. And this is because for me what I found is that to have the same breakfast through the week and the same lunch through the week is really effective. And then I vary my dinners and I vary my weekends a lot. But this takes a lot of the decision making out. It takes it just simplifies my week a lot. Now for some people, they don't like to eat the same thing back to back, and that's totally fine. You can still use this structured approach and not have the same thing every day. The biggest asset to this structured approach is having it written down what you're eating on which days, so that when you get home from a long day at work, you don't even have to think twice about what you're eating. You just look at your meal plan and you know exactly what it is, and it's already ready or it's ready to be ready. Let's see here. I like to use up my dinner leftovers, something that we'll talk about in a second. Account for snacks, that's actually going to be on the next picture. But I do like to account for that as well. It's something you have to grocery shop for, and it's something I'm going to be eating. And so I want to make sure that because I know I typically like to have an afternoon snack between my lunch and my dinner, I want to know what that's going to be for each day. And then lastly, you'll see I've underlined a couple of items there. Can you guys read that? No? Okay. So what I have written out here, this says smoothie / eggs with some veggies. The reason why there's 2 options there is that the first one is for my husband and the second one is for me. So this is just a demonstration too of how meal planning can even work with different meal preferences and different eating styles. I know that was something that we put on that questionnaire. Thank you all, by the way, for filling that out. Some of the feedback is that it is a challenge if your your family eats differently than you. Very real life challenge. The way that we work this out in my family, and this is just based on preference, and also the lunchtime meal is split because of availability of microwave and refrigerator. He doesn't have them, I do. So his lunches always look a little different than mine. But we just account for it and we plan for it in that way. So it can be done, it does take a little bit more preparation that way. Back to the underlining idea. I underline foods that I'm going to need to cook or prepare. And that just helps me visually see how much I'm committing myself to that week. So I'm not trying to cook every meal every day, or I'm not trying to do 6 meals prepared on one day, try to spread it out. It just depends on what I'm going for that week. Any questions so far?
How well do you adhere to your plan?
Great question. So what you'll see on the next slide, I think, is I do talk about building in some flexibility. So for the most part, I do stick to my plan, but life happens. Things come up, or maybe someone gets a free lunch or a free dinner out and about, and we've got extra leftovers. I throw it in the freezer, and I build it into my meal plan the next week. So any week before I start, I always kind of survey the freezer and the fridge and see what needs to be eaten up, and I use that first. So, really good question. All right. So, the next step then, once I've got my breakfasts and my lunches done, I fill in my weekends and my dinners. And these often go together. So what I have found works best for me is to cook Saturday lunch, Saturday dinner, Sunday lunch, Sunday dinner, which makes for a heavy weekend. But then I eat those leftovers Monday dinner, Tuesday dinner, Wednesday dinner, Thursday dinner. And that just, it makes it really easy for us. That's the cooking big batches idea. And then pre-portioning leftovers. So if I make a big batch of something and there's 3 servings left, but I'm going to put it in the freezer, I want to make it easy for myself to grab those later on and go. So rather than freezing all 3 servings in one big container, I freeze them individually so that if my husband is working late and I'm home and need dinner, I can just pull out one, or however that might work. It just makes that a little bit easier. I also try to coordinate ingredients, and this is something that I have gotten better at with time. I didn't used to be good at this. But on my meal plan this week, I've got a barbecue chicken pizza with a homemade plantain crust and a salad. And then I've got a chicken avocado soup with squash, I believe that says. And then later on, a Mexican-style meatloaf with a salad. So all three of those meals use cilantro. Now, I'm a big fan of cilantro anyway, but that's an ingredient that a lot of times we might buy a bunch of and use 2 tablespoons of. So whenever I can, I try to use up those ingredients in different recipes through the week to minimize waste. And then here also you see allow spontaneity, so that's just what Terry was asking. I put in, well, my pictures are one ahead of my words are one ahead of my pictures. So right here, Saturday morning breakfast, this is a variable meal for us. So I have here pancakes, question mark, eggs, question mark, and later in the afternoon too, I have out, question mark, or egg salad, question mark. And that is where I build that flexibility in. So even though I do have a structured meal plan, that's something where we kind of have like our gated area, and I know what we can do within that area, but I don't have a definite set decision there. Maybe I don't feel like eggs that morning, and so I can do a smoothie or something like that. I want to go back one slide. So this bottom part here, these next 3 points are things that I think really, really help in the meal planning process, and that is pulling out your recipes, making a grocery list, and taking advantage of a CSA if you do that. And the reason why this is so important to me is as I'm thinking through my meals for the week, I'm pulling out the recipe for my plantain pizza crust, and I'm pulling out the recipe for my chicken avocado soup. And maybe it's from one of my cookbooks here, or it's online. But as I'm pulling those recipes out, I'm making my grocery list right here on the side of my meal plan. So then, by the time my meals are planned, my grocery list is made, and everything is done, pretty much. The list to the left of that is a list of items that I got in my CSA box that week. So, do you all know what a CSA box is?
I don't know what a CSA box is.
It's community supported agriculture, and it's like a fruit and vegetable delivery box.
Delivery, yeah.
Yes. So I used Full Circle, had a great experience with them, and then our needs just shifted in delivery. They didn't coordinate with my cooking day anymore. But again, in efforts to not waste any food, I would make a list of all the items that I had in my box that week and then cross them off as I accounted for them in my meal plan. So, just another little way to keep things tidy. Okay, I think that was all for that slide. The last thing I like to do is highlight the meals that I'm cooking. I've already underlined them, but I like to highlight them. The more you guys get to know me, the more you'll understand how I like things neat and organized. And so again, this is
That's why I hired her.
So again, it's just another visual cue for me, so I can double check myself. Did I overcommit myself here or not? And just so I plan the rest of my day accordingly. I like to note special prep on my meal plan as well, so you can see some little tidbits here that says thaw salmon and thaw meat. So you'll see a picture of my freezer here in a minute. But I buy meat in bulk oftentimes, and so we'll freeze it in recipe-sized portions. And if it comes time to cook my meal, but my meat's not thawed, well, that's an issue. So I remind myself however many days in advance that I need to thaw the meat to pull it out. And then I also break down my grocery list by grocery store. The last thing on this list, double check your staples. That is kind of like we referred to earlier, having just some fallback meals like egg salad or green smoothie or tuna salad, eggs. Those are kind of our staples, so that if something comes up or we run out of food or we have a surprise guest that eats part of our leftovers that we planned for another meal, we do have those foods to fall back on that are just kind of instinctual, and I don't find myself drifting into the temptation zone. Couple other notes, I mentioned this earlier, I do all my cooking on the weekend and eat leftovers all week long. I do also have a list of my favorite easy meals Mine just looks like this. But I also use Pinterest a lot for this, and I actually created a Pinterest board for you all of a lot of my tried and true favorite recipes. And these are all simple, these are my go-tos. So I will use this board as much as you will. But it's on our Menu for Change Pinterest site for you guys to take a look at.
Is your chicken avocado soup on there?
Sure is. Yes, it is. Jerry likes that one. And then lastly, my meal plan is never this mean. Like I said earlier, I wish I should have brought down my in-process meal plan because it's full of scratches and scribbles, and so I don't want you to think that meal planning is a perfect process. It's just a matter of getting it done. And the truth is, sometimes I don't feel inspired, and so I have to put it down, and I come back to it the next day, or that's why I start on Wednesdays, in case I don't feel inspired on Wednesdays. And then I still have Thursday. And sometimes it's not elaborate, it's very straightforward, very simple, full of fallback meals, and other weeks it's much more creative. It just, for me, meal planning is all about having that security of knowing that I'm going to be able to stick to my goals that week. So, let's see. I want to give you guys a brief tour of my kitchen and pantry. So, this is my freezer. As you can see, lots of mason jars full of single-serve portions of leftovers and foods in there. Some frozen meat on the bottom, frozen bananas for smoothies. More mason jars. We like mason jars in my house. So this is right after a shopping trip. Kira's going to talk in a minute about how to know how much to purchase. So in my approach, I know exactly how much to purchase because I have recipes that tell me how much. But if you're not using that approach, you'll still know because Kira's going to teach you how to do that. So here I've purchased all of my ingredients.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
Are you supposed to refrigerate Hemparts? Yes. Oh, really? It says on the package. I did not know that.
Learn something new.
I learned it. Thank
They won't
you.
go rancid immediately. It just helps preserve them longer.
That's freezer, right?
This is the refrigerator right
Oh,
here.
that's refrigerator.
This was freezer. Freezer door, freezer shelf, fridge. Lots more veggies and some fruit in the drawers. My pantry here. Coconut milk I cook with a lot. Tuna, you can see my stash of tuna in there. Some trail mix for my husband. The big funky thing is kombucha. That's my all my extra scobies. So if you guys ever want to start a kombucha ferment, I can hook you up. I get one to you. Another shelf here. Chia seeds, sesame seeds, hazelnuts, raw honey. These are all just things that I tend to buy in bulk and then I store in jars. And I add to a lot of recipes. So in the big picture of things, I don't have a ton of different ingredients. I mean, I have a variety, but not a ton of different ingredients in my pantry. I just use them in mix and match kind of ways. Produce. This is my recipe binder. I almost brought it for you guys. It's 4 inches thick. But what I have in here is I've divided it out by category, similar to how I've done the Pinterest boards. And that's just, this is, the reason why is because I like to cook. That's why I do what I do.
Is it also color coded?
Yes, it is. You guys are getting to know a whole new Tracy tonight. But yeah, I have recipes in here that I've made, and then half of these are ones I've never made. I just want to try. So, and then of course some cookbooks which I brought for you guys today. And I think this is my last slide. Yeah. So, I'm gonna have Kira come up and give her presentation, and then we'll open the floor after Kendall goes for some question and answer. Anything that was not clear about my presentation that you want to know before that? Okay. I like to keep it organized. Moral of the story.
The kernel of truth is
Yeah.
the karma. So one caveat before I jump into a more free-form approach is that I love to food shop. It's meditative for me. I spend a long time, okay, I don't get out much on the road, so this is my time for me, and I like to just drift and be inspired, and so out of that comes a more free-form approach. But as I was trying to jot my process down for you guys, I realized that there would be
some good news and some bad news to share with you. And which one do you want to hear first? Good or bad?
Bad.
Bad. Everybody wants to always hear bad. So we'll start with that. And bad is that even though this approach is free-form, different from Tracy's, it does require preparation. And that's what I realized, that there's a lot of kind of behind-the-scenes stuff that I do that I don't think about because it's on autopilot for me. And the behind-the-scenes stuff is stocking a lot of non-perishable basics that I'll lead you through, making sure that those are in my pantry and my freezer, so that I can be more free-form with the other ingredients. The good news, by the way, is that once you get into the habit of things, it does feel kind of liberating. It doesn't feel like a chore. And so let's begin. Okay. So I wanted to follow Tracy's template so that, well, because it's a good template and because then you can see the contrast and similarities between our approaches. So, benefits of meal planning. For me, it helps me and my family eat healthier. It ensures that we're getting the correct proportions that we talk about a lot in our one-on-one visits, of proteins, of carbs, of lipids. It ensures that the only additives that are in my food are the ones that I put in my food. And it reduces all the added sugars and oils that come along with foods that you get elsewhere. And it also ensures that you're eating delicious food. I've gotten to be such, and maybe this is a bad thing, I think of it as a good thing, I've gotten to be such a restaurant snob because I feel like I can make really good food at home, and so why go? To go, I need to go somewhere really, really, really good. So, and spending, that's another motivator for me. That's how I kind of got into it. Okay, what about the benefits of a flexible meal plan? Well, I don't spend the time planning my meals, so maybe fewer time requirements in that way, and it also allows me to kind of look for what's in season / what's on sale usually, like delicata squashes right now are in season, and I just got a big old bag that's loved by everyone in the family, including the 1-year-old. So that's what you see here is shiitake and delicata squash. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about kind of, maybe not the boring stuff, but okay, the boring stuff, the stuff to stock behind the scenes so that you can feel liberated in getting all the perishable ingredients whenever you see them, whenever they're in season. You know, I love farmers markets, but if I were to go to a farmers market to shop for all of my meal ingredients, it would A, be expensive, and B, be impossible because a lot of stuff isn't at the farmer's market. So, okay, so stocking up on protein. Just like Tracy, I like to feed my freezer. Whenever I buy protein for the week to put in the fridge, I also buy protein for whenever to put in the freezer. So I'm always thinking about feeding my freezer. So here's what, actually our reserves were getting kind of low. So this is good. Next shopping trip that I make is going to be a monstrous one because I got to restock the freezer. But this is some ground beef that I made into some lunch. I can show you guys. I brought my lunch with me actually for tomorrow to show you. But when I'm shopping for protein, I think about ½ a pound per person per meal. That's a pretty generous, actually, estimate, but it's better to be on the generous side because you can always have leftovers rather than the other way around. So think about that when you're buying for a meal if you don't have a recipe that you go and buy. The other thing is, oh yeah, okay, so those are my 2 tips for you. Okay, and then my greens too I'm planning. So I'm planning 2 cups per person for lunch and dinner, which makes for a lot of greens. My fridge is at the end of a shopping trip pretty packed full with veggies. And then I find the important thing is to get some veggies that can last and that are my basics. So I always have carrot, celery, and then some sort of parsley, dill, or cilantro in my fridge. And as Tracy alluded to, cilantro, dill, that kind of stuff can go bad. So freeze it up. So what I'll do is, this is dill. I got a big packet of dill, and half of it I just chopped, stuck in a Ziploc bag, and stuck in a freezer. And I've actually used some of that frozen dill in a soup this week. So that's one thing that you can do, that it works really well with those flavorful greens. You can just chop them and freeze them. But carrots and celery, always, whenever I'm at the store, I always do a mental check of my fridge. And I get like a big thing of carrots. So I rarely have to refill it, but I'm always remembering that bag when I go shopping. Do I need more of the, and this stuff can last. The other thing that I always keep in my pantry are flavor enhancers. That's what I call my onions, my garlic, but a bunch of other foods that are non-perishable can be my flavor enhancers. And they just make any recipe that I choose to do pop. This is smoked paprika. Anybody use this stuff? It is amazing. So smell this, it'll wake you up and it'll smell good. The other thing that I do is I always pilfer rosemary from my neighbor's yard. They know, so it's okay. They're a big bush.
You don't want to know anything about it. Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, we all have right. This is one of my favorite foods.
Because there too, all you do is show up.
This is
And then they
interesting.
put you through the drill. It takes so much more motivation to do it.
What makes you don't think that's a menu for change? It's making me
Well, that's what I used to do for a work. Because there too, but I just can't get it.
None of your paleo cutouts, obviously, are all out, but in addition, eggs, nuts, nightshades, and
So I have a question for both of you individually. So when you travel or go on vacation, what is your approach to meal planning, and what is your approach to meal planning?
Yeah, well, it kind of depends on where I'm going. But for the most part, when I am not at home, I am just thinking plate method. So wherever I'm eating, however that looks, whether it's at a restaurant, at a friend's house, whether we're on the road, I'm thinking, do I have my carbohydrates, my proteins, my healthy fats, and vegetables in as close to the plate method proportion as I can get it. The other thing is I always travel with my staples. So I've got a couple of bars in there, maybe an Epic bar and a Zing bar. I've got almost always some carrots and cucumbers, maybe some baby bell peppers, maybe some kale chips, nuts, seeds, and a couple pieces of fruit. Sardines, I always take sardines on a plane. I don't know when I'm on a plane.
Under 3 ounces? No.
So,
Well, we are big fans of Airbnb, where you can get houses with kitchenettes. So oftentimes we will do that to at least have our breakfasts and maybe our dinners at home, and then maybe lunch out when we're out. And in that case, I do very much rely on that plate method, just like you do, Tracy. But it can be really helpful. Of course, business trips don't allow for that flexibility, but vacations certainly do. It can be helpful to go for places where you have a kitchen and more control. For New Year's, we're actually renting a house with our friends, and we have everybody signing up to do a breakfast and a dinner. And we try to do that as much as possible.
So can I ask a question? What advice do you have for somebody who hates to cook?
great question.
Which would be me.
Yeah, and there are several of you in that boat. Not everyone loves to cook. So I guess I should be putting this up on the screen because you guys answered this survey, and so we kind of gave suggestions as to what to do. To answer your question, Irene, you could go with something like Kendall's approach, where she's providing delicious, home-cooked, simple but elaborate meals, full of flavor. Or I also have a list of no-cook meals. I think I've given you that list before, but you can piece together a meal that you don't even have to cook. It can be some good quality deli turkey meat with a handful of chopped veggies and half of a small avocado or a handful of nuts. And what am I missing? A piece of fruit.
That would be my lunch most days.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then you can mix and match with that. You can get a different kind of meat. You can choose a tuna. You can mix up your fruit. You can vary your fat source, coconut flakes versus nuts. And be creative in that way. For breakfast, you can rely on things like hard-boiled eggs, which requires 10 minutes of cooking 1 time per week. Or you could do something, you could do leftovers, if you had any leftovers from another meal, or a non-traditional breakfast, a handful of nuts and a piece of jerky, or things like that.
And if you find yourself getting tired of your staples, then that's time to really think about your flavor enhancers.
Yeah.
If you vary those up, you'll find that your meal takes on a completely different flavor to you.
Yeah, excellent point. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, I think what we'll do, I'll leave this up here just for you guys to look at, but I'm going to head right over here. Kira's going to stay over
Yeah, I'll
here.
sit over here.
And feel free to just kind of float between us. It is almost 6:30, so if you do need to hop out, feel free, but we will be here as resources to you.
For those who have to leave, thank you for coming. It's been a great event, and please help yourself to some of Kendall's delicious items that she brought, and you can peruse the books as well just to see what Tracy and Dr. Curie have in their tablets.
You feel inspired.